everyone. Welcome to Daybreak. I am your host, Nicholas Sadowski. We have a fantastic test today. And so let's just get started with it. We have no real news, but just as a word of information here, we finished recording our host interviews episode over the weekend, and it is currently being put together and edited by the studio. So that should be out in about 1 or 2 weeks, depending on their schedule, because they are very busy. But we will see what happens with that. But regardless, it will definitely be out in about 2 weeks. So let's get started with my first guest here today. My first guest is a wonderful contributor of ideas and has been a guest a number of times here on Daybreak. Very good friend of mine from the town of Sherborne, Massachusetts. Please welcome to Daybreak the wonderful Grace Mulrooney. You can unmute yourself.
Okay.
Hi, Grace.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic, and I'm not realizing that I accidentally just flipped everything, and now you're going first.
Yeah, I thought Riley was going first, but
she was supposed to, and now I forgot that. But we can just do the game and then have Riley on. It's fine. We can do a fluid thing here.
Okay.
This was literally completely random because I was on my way to the Bossy Studios when you texted me, I'm free tomorrow, and then I was like, I'm free only in the morning tomorrow, and I'm like, oh boy, okay. So I'm just like, I gotta put everything together in the car on the way to do something. So this is very last minute, but we'll see how this goes. So so you were last on Daybreak in the season finale of Daybreak 2020. 2020, wow, that was a year. So how have you been since? I think that would have been October.
Yeah, it was October. I've been pretty good. Nothing much really going on, just school.
Well, I know that you and Riley both go to Dover Sherborne, so I've had a number of conversations with Riley in terms of school. But but you are all full remote, like you chose to not go to school at all. So how has remote learning been this whole year?
It's okay. I mean, there are pros and cons with everything. Yeah, like with remote learning, I feel like a pro is definitely, you're not in a room with a bunch of other people. And I'm not really a big fan of people, so I kind of like being in my room and having my own space to do my work. And then there's cons, obviously, especially since DS is going back to 4 days next of the class, which is there, and then I'm in a corner. So it's kind of you take it both ways, but I mean, some days I can go get lunch, and I am my permit now, so I can drive. So that's nice. Fun. Whereas I'd be and if you have a DR, you don't have to sign in for Zoom, so you can go watch a TV show or do your work. Whereas if I were at school, I'd be sitting in a classroom with, again, a bunch of other people. Wouldn't really enjoy that. So yeah.
So DS goes to 4 days a week?
4 days for 2 weeks, I think. And then after April break, we go back to 5 days.
So what day do you have off? Would that be a Wednesday?
We have Wednesday, and that's extra help day, band day,
okay.
Study day. But then after we go back, it's going to be class day.
Okay. So I'm very curious because you chose to be full remote. What do you think the positives of going back full in person are, if there are any in your mind?
You mean for people now or for people like me next year?
If you had to make in general.
I think the positives would be seeing people who I want to see, like my friends and my teachers and other people. Learning in person would be fun. The issue for me is always safety.
Right.
And I get really freaked out about COVID, things that I don't need to get freaked out, like opening the mail. I'm ah. So I think that going to school for me would be hard. I think that's why my family and I made the choice. We also made the choice for other reasons. But I'm 16, so I can get the vaccine soon, which is exciting. And then after that, my dad said, even if you didn't have the vaccine, we're going to send you back next year because the school seems to be doing a pretty good job and the kids who've gotten COVID are like going to the Bahamas. So it's not like their fault that, you know, those kids got COVID. So I think it will be fun being able to learn in person. I think it will be nice to see my school again, which I haven't seen since March of 2020 when it was cold and wet and just like gross. So seeing it in the summer, in the spring, in the fall, I always love BS in the fall because there are so many trees and the forest is nearby. And yeah, I guess learning and like not just like sitting on my desk in my PJs would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so Norwell has just experienced our week in person. Well, week. I mean, Monday week it was just my cohort, and today we have off, obviously. But we had the first 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, everyone back in person, and the way our school is horribly set up. The school was designed by someone who designed prisons. So originally there were no windows built into the school, so it's basically this enormous concrete thing, but they eventually renovated it to put windows in, but the school is just still built of concrete, so it's pretty depressing, but the people are nice. But the issue is that, speaking of safety, you have this long hallway. So DS, I don't know about the high school, but the middle school had that spine down the middle where you had the science wing and then you had the main wing on either side of the thing there, and then the library and all that stuff. But the way Norwell built their school was you have this long hallway. At one end is the gym, and at the other end is the little theater, which is just a small auditorium. And just before that, every single hallway meets in the same location. You have the gold hallway up and down, you have the blue hallway up and down, the language wing, the art room, and the foreign language wing all like meet in the exact same location. So you have 500 kids like crashing into each other in this mess of a hallway system because there's nowhere else for them to go because they have to get in one of these hallways. So the issue with just the way our school is set up is it's just horribly designed, especially for a COVID environment where you have to be separated. But there's really, I mean, you can't change the layout of the school. There's nothing you can do about that. So I've never really been to Dover Sherborne High School. I mean, I've walked around it a bit, but not really. Is there any place, I don't know if you went there last year. So is there any place that, I'll ask Riley this too, that you think that there might be issues with keeping everyone's distanced and everything?
Well, I think Riley would probably be better answer that question because I haven't been to the school since COVID. And I know because I get emails from the like counselors and everything that they have one classrooms I think that are in use, but I think that Riley would definitely be a better person to ask because I really have like no clue.
I was curious if you had any like from last year, if you had any thoughts. So
from last year?
Yeah, because you were there last year. I was wondering if you like.
Am I slow? I think I'm.
No, well I have incredibly horrible Wi-Fi connection, like famously terrible, and so it's not you, it's me. So we're trying to get through that. The good thing about Daybreak is that will not be in my room. It will be in the studio, which is in the basement directly next to the Wi-Fi router. But I am not near my Wi-Fi router because I'm 2 floors above it. So I have to, like having calls with my teachers when we have the long block check-ins, which is like a 30-minute session in the middle of long block, is like awful because like half the time I can't understand what they're saying because half the time they're frozen on my screen. So it's a bit of an issue. I think when I had Riley do one of our Daybreak stories, we constantly were running into like freezing issues. I kept having to restate the thing we were saying. The recording was like an hour long because of that. Anyways, this is why we test things. But yeah, so you were there from in the high school at the beginning of 2019 to like March 2020. And now you're all remote. So how would you compare your educational experience? Like, do you think you're getting the same level of education? Do you think that it's harder, easier? Like, how would you compare the two, having experienced both?
I think that it is pretty much the same as freshman year. I think that, I mean, freshman year in school, I think that freshman year at home was like, no one knew what the hell was going on. And it was like pass, fail. And like, if you get a 50, you still pass, and like, no one cared.
Right.
But now I think that, the school, obviously, because there are some kids who have like lung problems or health issues, that means they can't attend school. And then there are obviously people like me who are just like, yeah, I don't want to go to school, I don't feel safe doing that. So they obviously knew that they were going to have people who would make that choice, so they definitely stepped up in their remote learning experience. I think that teachers are used to teaching remote, since they were all remote in the spring of last year. So they know, like, if there's a Zoom problem, if there's an issue. The only thing that I have trouble with is like assessments, because, assessments are really difficult because everybody in class, normally they do that on in-class days because like kids cheat. So, they'll have like everyone taking the paper or like the test or whatever in person, and then they like just sit and they just like stare at you the whole entire time that you're on camera, because they like don't want to see like looking at your notes. But the problem is that I work on an iPad because I don't have a computer. So my iPad, like my camera turns off when I exit out of Zoom. So my teachers are always like, she turned her camera off. And I'm like, I have to explain. I'm like, no, it's my iPad. Like, I would never do anything like that. Like, please don't yell at me. And they're understanding. And but I definitely know some kids who literally flat out told me, who are remote students, that they've cheated on tests. And I'm like, first of all, why? Second of all, why are you telling me? Like, I don't need to know that. And it's just really awkward because there's so many like stakes of like being remote. And then I remember we had a math test yesterday, and that was the last day. Everybody was remote. That was the last day of hybrid. And then so like everybody was taking the test remote, and the teacher just kind of like sat and like stared at everybody in the line, and I could see her like moving her mouse to make sure that nobody was like looking at their notes or anything, because it's easy, it's easy to do that. If you have a problem, just be like, oh,
Right.
And that's what a lot of kids tend to do. So assessments are really hard because it's really awkward. But other than that, I think, it's okay. It's not the worst.
Right. Now, I don't know if this would be my last question, but I don't know if you will have this option next year. I don't know how it works. But if you had the option to next year, would you continue to stay full remote next year, or would you choose to go back in person next year?
I think actually I know that I'm going back in person. Like my dad's told me that. He's like seen the stats of the school, and so is my mom, and they're like, it seems pretty safe and pretty good. And like I said, the kids who get COVID are dumb kids who like go out and do really dumb things. So
don't go to Jamaica, people.
Yeah. So I think that there will definitely be some kids who are full remote, like incoming freshmen maybe, who have asthma or whatever, who can't get the vaccine. But I may already have the vaccine because I'm 16. And even if I didn't, it seems pretty good. Like the school's doing a pretty good job with cleaning and everything. So yeah, it's my junior year too. So that's like a really important year. So I kind of feel like I would have to go back no matter if I felt safe or not. Cause like, I don't want to take the SATs on. I don't think that's an option, but like say I'm taking the SATs online, like that would suck. So yeah, I think that when I go back, it will be fun and it will be much better than remote. But like I said, remote's not that bad.
Right. Yeah. All right. So that is 15 minutes of the interview. But as I said, I'm still going to play the game with you, even though you're first, because that's my fault on that part of it. Now figuring out how this works, isn't it? Let's just do this. Oh, yes, I do. Okay. I'm still learning how technology works. I'm really horrible with it. Any person who is my friend during remote definitely knows I do not understand how anything works. Let's see. So let's do, is it true? Because I have a couple of those that I wrote down. So I haven't done a game in so long. Oh my God. All right, so our first is it true statement thing. So if you forgot how is it true works, just for anyone watching, basically, I say a statement. If you say that the statement is true or false, you get a point. If you say the word that will make the statement true after guessing correctly if it was true or false, you could double your points. But if you get that wrong, you lose all of your points. But that is an optional thing to do. You do not have to do that, so you can just take the 1 point.
Wait, so if there's a statement that I think is true, I say it's true, but if it's false and then I try again, I get double points? Is that what
No,
you said?
so for example, if you say, oh, this statement is wrong, if you say the word that will make the statement true, you can double your points. Sorry, that was mine.
So it's like sentence and fragment for grammar. It's like, if it's a fragment, change it to a sentence, yay, bonus points.
Sure, yeah, I've never done that, but yeah.
Okay.
All right, so cannoli is the plural form of the word that describes the mascarpone-filled tube-like dessert.
False.
It's true.
Really? I thought that cannoli was singular.
Cannoli is plural. Cannolu with a U is the singular.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to Italian. I started trying to learn Italian, but I fell off of it just because I lost interest. But yeah, cannolu is the singular. I was going to say unpluralized, the singular version of the word. I'm not done. Okay. I'm curious to see, because actually this one is up to interpretation. So I'm curious to see what you say for this one as a music person yourself. There were 5 members of the Beatles.
True.
Who was the 5th?
He was their producer. I forget his name. I think his name was like Dave something.
No.
But I don't remember his name. And then no, not the producer. There was another dude, and then he left, and he regretted it for the rest of his life, probably. Right? Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, I was gonna go with the producer one, who's the most famous.
Yeah, I thought there was a 5th. Oh no, maybe that was the Rolling Stones. I don't know. There's so many bands.
So we had John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, and many people consider George Martin to be the 5th Beatle because he arranged everything for them, like all the strings. Like if you look at Strawberry Fields Forever, that's all him. If you look at A Day in the Life, that's all him. So like all of those horns, that's all George Martin. So a lot of people consider George Martin to be the 5th Beatle. But I'll give you 2 points for that one for saying 5. You're taking chemistry this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so use your chemistry knowledge for this one.
Okay.
Pure water conducts electricity.
True. No, false.
Yes.
Yeah, it's salt
False.
water.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like what? Okay, so I'll double your points if you tell me why it doesn't conduct electricity.
I don't know. We don't know about pure water collecting and electricity. Because there's no mineral salt content in it, which means that the water's just like a big heap of nothing.
What? It doesn't have to be salt to make it.
I really don't.
So, okay, I love chemistry. I'm going to go on a little bit here. So the reason why is because in order for something to conduct electricity, there must be free moving particles, and they also must be charged. Ionic compounds that go into water, when they dissolve and dissociate, the positive ions and the negative ions separate, creating charged particles in the water for the electricity to move. And those particles are the electrons. Now, water is a covalent bond. Covalent bonds need to disintegrate, but the issue is that there's nothing to pull the water apart if there's just water, and there's no charged particles then, and it's free to move, but there's no charged particles. So electricity cannot go through pure water. But if you're saying, well, then why do people say get out of the pool? It's because water is almost never pure water in the real. You can never find pure water in the real world. You have to make it yourself. But yeah, so that explanation was like 2 minutes. But yeah, so that was a perfect number of questions, and I don't even know how to make this full screen. Oh, here we go. So that was our Is It True? Thank you so much, Grace. I haven't seen you in a really long time, and it's been nice to talk about school for the first time we get to reconnect, but we'll have the board meeting after this to discuss how this went. But thank you so much for coming on Daybreak. It was a pleasure talking to you, and we'll talk again in like 15 minutes.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so that was my interview with Grace Mulrooney. Oh, it's fun, so fun to do those transitions again. All right, that was my interview with Grace Mulrooney. Again, we talked about school and we just did Is It True? Again, you can play Is It True at home if you'd like, and if you would like to, on the Daybreak website, there is a section on the Daybreak starring Nicholas Sadowski section on there that is titled like Daybreak activities, and all the games that are on Daybreak are listed there. So if you want to play any games that we've played on this show, it's all listed there with the instructions and examples and everything. So if you want to play this at home, they're right there. I mean, some of them are like, well, can you really play this at home? Like some of them are sort of more tailored for a talk show, but Is It True? Playing favorites, like all those games, you can play those at home. And so I recommend that you do. And go look at the website for the instructions if you are curious. Now, our next guest was supposed to be our first guest, but due to my waking up about 30 minutes ago, we'll have a second. But ladies and gentlemen, please, we've had her on so many times in a variety of different ways with the testing, with Daybreak Stories, with regular Daybreak. She is the chairwoman of the Board of Ideas. Please welcome the wonderful Riley Kraaijvanger back to Daybreak.
Hello, thanks for having me again.
Welcome back, Riley.
Thank you for having me. I think I'm not sure how many times, but it's nice to be welcome back again.
I feel like I've dragged you onto so many things randomly, but I was doing the staff bios on the website, and I'm just like trying to find everything that you were, and I'm like that. I'm like, oh my God.
But I've liked being a part of everything, so thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we just got finished talking with Grace about her being full remote. So you have been hybrid, as you have said, and you go back full in person very, very, very soon.
Yeah.
So, are you looking forward to that?
Well, I think I am grateful for the opportunity and the chance to go back.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I've gotten really used to the hybrid schedule, so I've really liked having the 2 days remote, 2 days in person, and then the Wednesday just to do work and kind of go to extra help if I needed it. And I think
Right.
like everything, your routine kind of becomes what you're used to. So that's what I'm used to now. So I think like anything, kind of transitioning away from that into a different schedule, and I think probably a more rigorous schedule with more work and more expectations is going to be a hard change. But I'm also really happy to get more time to see my friends and see my teachers.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that there's definitely mixed feelings about it, but I'm more excited to go back for the 4 days in person than the 5 days in person, which is going to be at the end of April. So, but I can't really do anything about that. So
Right.
I'm just going to go with it and kind of go with the flow.
Do you think that there will be any initial problems? Like, do you think that there'll be things that we're all gonna have? Like when we went back full in person this week, we had to get used to seeing the other half of the school there and being in a classroom 3 feet apart, not 6. And so, do you think that there'll be any shocking initial things that you're just gonna have to get used to over time?
Yeah, I think, well, right now we're going to school with the freshmen and then our class, the sophomore class. So there's a significantly less amount of people in the school building than when it's going to be the juniors and the seniors. So
Right.
I think that there's going to be a lot of people and a lot more crowding in the halls and in the classrooms. So I think that that's going to be an adjustment. And also I feel like now everyone, even though the pandemic isn't over, people are thinking that it's over. So I think that there's a lot of there's going to be a lot more relaxed COVID protocols and protections are going to be lifted. So I'm kind of expecting that, and I think I'm getting vaccinated sometime pretty soon. So
Nice.
That's a relief, but yeah.
I think another thing that you're going to have to get used to is not being on top anymore, because on your day, you're the tallest people there, you're the highest grade, and soon you'll be looking up at people again. They're just like, what happened? We were on top.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's gonna be kind of crazy. Usually we're the ones that get to be we get all the library spots during DRs and everything. And
right, yeah.
they're back at the bottom of the pile.
I remember that when we went for the day where we were in the building touring it, so like all the seniors got like the first spots of the library. I'm remembering all that now.
Yeah. Well, usually, I don't know, I was kind of like a rebellious freshman, so I went to the library sometimes, but it's definitely, you get some stares. But they tell you, oh, it's just like, it's not a real thing. People don't actually care about it, but yeah, they care about it.
What's this freshman doing here? Yeah.
Exactly.
We were in a number of classes and everyone like just makes fun of the freshmen for being a freshman. Like, oh, you're a freshman. We are allowed to make fun of you for that. I'm a sophomore now. They can't touch me.
Exactly.
And the people who are making fun of me are now my friends. So it's now they're just making fun of me because of my friends. So which is better? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah.
So I asked Grace this to compare the last year to her being all remote. So you'll be going back soon. So let's do a final comparison. So how has your experience educationally differed from last year when you were full in person before COVID in March and your experience now?
Okay, so I think that there's definitely been a lot of changes, but I feel like I've gotten so used to the hybrid schedule that it feels normal now. So I think like going fully in person, it's what's gonna feel weird. Like that's kind of the shift that's like happening in my brain where now this is kind of like the daily routine that I like and everything like that. So I think the major differences are probably just that I feel like there's been a significant decrease in how stressed I am because
Right.
I feel like I have so much more time to complete work, and I feel like there's less in-person class time, so there's more time for me to kind of like have some freedom and do some things that I might not be able to do in like full in-person school, like spend more time with my family and kind of get outside more. But I think like there also with that comes a decrease in the amount of learning that I'm able to do. So I think I have learned less this year than I learned last year, or like up until the point where COVID hit last year. So I think like, yeah.
Yeah, the school board had a number of complaints because, I mean, I don't like the school board, but they had a number of complaints because the way we didn't have those Zoom calls. So when we were on our remote days, it was asynchronous remote work. So we didn't see our teachers when we were at home. So like, for example, last week was the week before this one was the last time that we were remote. So Friday we were remote. I didn't see my teachers at all. I didn't see any students. I was just here doing work until about 12, like probably like 11, and then I was done for the rest of the day. And then a lot of parents complain saying that this is not enough work to do at home. And so we started doing, like a couple months ago, we started doing these things called long block look-ins, which during our 2-hour long block in the middle of the day for fourth period when we have lunches, we'd have to call in to a teacher. We use Google Meets, but call into a teacher to just make sure we were all awake and everything. So the complaints were that we didn't get a lot of education and we didn't have a lot of homework and everything. So I know you sort of answered this, but do you think that you got the same quality of education? Do you think you just got less of it, or do you think that you were pushed further to try and get everything done by the end of the year? So like, how do you think like educationally this past year was?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think like, well, it's hard to kind of compare because I didn't get like a normal sophomore year
Well,
education.
right.
So like I'm not really sure what it would look like, but kind of like from what I expected it to be like, I feel like there's this weird feeling of the teachers trying to rush through like the core curriculum, but then also having like more time to relax. So it feels like in class, there's like it goes really rapidly. Like there's definitely and like you have your classes and then usually in-person days they just cram in the teachers cram in a bunch of tests and then you have your classes, you go in the next unit, then in-person days you do your tests. And I feel like it's definitely been that feels really rapid, but it also feels like since we only have 2 classes a week, it feels like I have more time like not learning, but I'm also when I'm in class, it feels like the learning is like definitely at an increased rate.
Yeah, So when you go back full in person, do you think they'll slow down a bit or do you think they'll speed up?
That's a good question. I feel like, well, we're nearing fourth term, so we only have like one term left in school, and I think that term we're gonna have MCAS, I believe,
Hmm?
and I think there's a lot of like other stuff kind of happening. So I feel like most classes only have a few more units left. So I think like with increased time or in-person time or just class time in general, there's going to be less there's going to be like the rate of education or like how much they're trying to give us is going to slow down. But I think that then like in comparison to now, just because the class time is going to go up, we're gonna end up doing like the same amount of work overall.
I was actually just going to ask about MCAS. So do you have MCAS this year?
I can't say for sure. My teachers are thinking, my math teacher thinks that we might have it, but it's still definitely like something that's up for either way. So I think like, but if we do have it, personally, I feel like that isn't fair to us as students, as we've kind of gone through this year not expecting to have it, and we were told at the beginning of the year that there wouldn't be any MCAS. So I think
Right.
that all the shifts and everything, and like how we were promised at the beginning of the year that there wouldn't be any schedule changes, and now the schedule is completely changed, and then we were promised that there wouldn't be MCAS, and now there is going to be MCAS most
Right.
likely. I think like that has been a lot to kind of like deal with all of the like the changing things that are happening all at once, instead of like the year hasn't gone as expected. So I think that that's been an interesting challenge.
Yeah, we have been confirmed to have MCAS. We're not going to make up last year's, but we have been told, yes, we're going to have MCAS towards the end of May. And my math MCAS I know is June 1st. So yay.
Yeah.
Hate MCAS so much. But then, I don't know, do you have AP in your grade level?
No, it starts junior year.
Okay, so in Norwell, you can take AP European history. So my AP test is May 19th, which is just before MCAS. So I've got a major AP exam, then English MCAS, then math MCAS, and then the end of the year.
Oh
So we've got
man,
to see, yeah, very
yeah.
fun. Do you, I'm curious because on Friday and Monday, the day before, no, on Thursday and Monday when I was actually there, the days that I was there, they tried to cram in to get everyone caught up on the same page before we went back full in person. So yesterday, no, you weren't in school yesterday. Whenever you were last in school, did they try and cram in like tests and everything to make sure everyone was on the same page when everyone returned back, or was it just sort of like,
I think, well, all of our tests and all of our classes have actually been pretty synced up, just because we concluded all of our units for break, and then we
hmm,
got back from break, so everything kind of started at the same pace, and we've like gone through the same pace mostly for each of the classes. So there have been like a lot of tests on the same days, but I'm not sure if we wrapped everything up. I think we have like, I know our math unit just wrapped up, but I think we have a chemistry unit that's about to wrap up. So I think the classes now are a little bit more staggered with testing and kind of unit finishing.
well, before we run out of time, I'm just because you mentioned chemistry. When I was doing the game with Grace, I mentioned the water molecules and everything. I'm just curious. Were you trying to answer that yourself?
I didn't know the answer.
Yeah, I apparently because of this year love chemistry, and so every time I'm on a call with one of my friends, I always make a chemistry joke, and they always hate me for it, but it's always really funny.
I think that chemistry is not my strong suit. I'm definitely more of like an English and history person. So
Okay.
the math classes can be a little bit challenging, but I definitely like them. I just have a harder time.
Hmm. So, have you done any labs in chemistry?
Well, that's actually an interesting question because our teacher is fully remote. So
Oh,
we've seen her once this year, and I think she should be coming back after April break because she'll be vaccinated. But yeah, so we've done labs, but we haven't done any labs with our teachers. So, like we haven't done the harder labs that like we need a lot of supervision for because
Right.
we have, yeah.
I remember about 2 days ago, we lit like almost the entire, well, not the entire room, but we lit almost a lot of stuff in the room on fire. It was very fun.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. We've done a few labs that have been kind of cool, but a lot of them are like very slow, you know, kind of like, oh look, a molecule. So
Yeah, we just transitioned out of doing the fun. Well, I mean, I like math, but out of doing the really fun stuff of lighting stuff on fire into more. This is a mole. What's a mole? 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. All that stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, time flies. It's really annoying. Time is like the most annoying thing on Earth. Why did we invent it?
I agree. Well, technically time isn't real, but
You're
we
right.
made papers and we made it seem real. So if you don't want to follow time, you don't have to.
Well, Zoom makes me because it has a limit, which is really unfortunate. Although, yeah, I can't. But Riley, it's been fantastic talking again. I think we've probably talked within a month, which is I really like talking to you, but I feel guilty for dragging you on to a lot of things.
No, I love it. I love coming on here. So thank you for having me.
All right, so I'll end this off, but then we'll have a board meeting out. I'll send another link out, so we'll do another board meeting. But so thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
All right, so that was my interview with Riley Kraaijvanger. If you want to see her in other interviews, please go on the website. Please, I cannot stress that enough. I really want people to visit the website. I've spent too long on it for no one to go on it. But if you're interested in just her description of what she does on the show, there's a section on the website called Staff, and I'm on top, then she's there. If you're interested in Grace, Grace is below. Yes, Grace is below Riley, and then Faith is below Grace. So if you're interested in any of those people, please go look at. Faith hasn't come on recently, but you'll see her on the host interviews. But go, please take a look at the website because it's taken me. If you were to compile it, probably all be like 30 days worth of work. If you were to take all the time and put it and consolidate it, but yeah, all the episodes are there. So if you want to see Riley, season 1, episode 1 isn't available, but everything that she was on season 3 plus is there. So please go take a look at the flipped interview, the most recent, the other tests that we did with her, the Daybreak stories and all the host interviews. But yeah, so go take a look at that because she's been extremely helpful in the entire process of testing Daybreak from the beginning. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching this test. And I'm excited to do these because I'm getting used to doing hosting again and doing a Daybreak episode, which is what this is for. So until the next time we do one of these, which will probably be in another month, thank you everyone so much for watching Daybreak, and I will see you next time whenever we do this next, which will probably be in a month. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.